right, Algebra 1, Lesson 40. This is teaching two different lessons, and this one is quotient rule for exponents, and then distributive property of rational expressions that contain negative exponents, blah, blah, blah. All that to say, okay, so far we have learned if something is x to the fifth, if I want for it to become a negative 5, do you remember what we would do?
Yeah, you could do like the 1/5.
1, okay, so you basically change x to its,
opposite.
no, there's a word. Oh, I just went blank.
Reciprocal.
Reciprocal! Yes, Isaac, thank you. Okay, so x, which would be x over 1 right now, even though if something is 6, then it's really 6 over 1 if you were to make it into a fraction, okay? So x over 1, alright, we would flip it and make its reciprocal, 1 over x, and this 5,
-5.
you make it negative 5. So, x to the fifth is this if you want it to become a negative 5. And same thing if I had, for example, 1 over x to the negative 2, because it's a negative 2 right here, we make it x, and then this negative 2 becomes positive 2, okay? So you would just do the reciprocal of that, and then the negative 2 to 2, okay? That's just a quick review. Now, what about this? What if I said x to the fifth power times 1 over x to the negative 2 power? No, x to the 2 power, second power. What would I do to figure out the answer to this?
You could flip the x and 1.
Okay, this one?
Yeah, you can flip that, which will make it x to the negative 2.
Okay, so he's saying let's go in and flip this, so then that becomes x to the negative 2. So let me go in and move this, x to the negative 2, okay? And now it becomes a problem we're used to, because remember when you're multiplying variables, then what you do is 5 plus negative 2, which becomes x to the third, okay? So that's the answer on that, okay? But you also could have done it a different way. For example, x to the fifth times 1 over x to the second power. What you could have done is put this over 1 and went x to the fifth times 1, which still becomes x to the fifth, and 1 times x to the 2, which is x to the 2. Okay? Now, the difference between when you're multiplying variables, the 5 and the 2 add. But when you divide variables, they subtract. So this actually is 5 minus 2, which is x to the third. See that? So these ones add, 5 plus 2 would be x to the 7, and this one, they subtract, 5 minus 2 would be 3. That's very, very, very important for you to know that when you're dividing, you subtract the numbers, and when you're multiplying variables, x and x's, then the exponents add. Very important that you know that, okay? So I'm going to state that. If you even want to write that down, when you multiply variables with exponents, you add the exponents. And when you're dividing variables basically are like letters, different letters that you're working with in math, with exponents, you subtract. That is definitely something when you start doing these kind of problems that you write down and star and put before you do every kind of problem. Just want to write those down on the top of the page so that you remember what to do. You subtract the exponents, okay? Now the variable has to be the same, so if it's x to the fifth and y to the negative 2, well, you can't do anything with those. That's like elephants and frogs, okay? So if I did x and that, and we're multiplying it, that's when this variable and this variable that have these exponents, if you're multiplying, then you're going to add these two, and if you're dividing, then you're going to subtract these two. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's just a quick thing that you need to know before we get to doing what we're about to do. Okay? Now, here's what this one says. Simplify this. But here's what it says. Write the answer with the x in the numerator. Okay? So then, let's move this to the numerator. Okay, leave this alone for a minute. So if we want to move this up, what do?
1 over x to the negative 4th.
Okay? Well, right now this is 1.
Oh.
It's x to the 4th. So if we move it up, it becomes x to the negative 4th. See that? Because right now it's 1 over x to the 4th.
Yeah.
See that? Even though the 1's not there, you may want to put it there. It may help you. And then this is x6 over 1. That helps you to see it like that. Okay? So this is 1x to the 4th. And if I move it up, it becomes x to the negative 4th. Right?
Yeah.
You understanding it?
Yes.
Okay. So now this becomes x6 and x to the negative 4th. Remember, when you're multiplying them, when they're side by side, that means multiply. This 6 plus a negative 4 becomes x to the second power. Good job. Okay, see how we did that? So you just went 6 and then negative 4. All right, let's do the next one. Actually, you know, let me teach you this real quick. X to the 6 becomes x over 4. You could ask also, because most of our answers, if we were to get a complete answer, are in the numerator, you can just do this. Remember how I told you if you're dividing them? 6 minus 4 is 2. So it just becomes x over 2. Now, if they want the answer in the denominator, it becomes way harder. Okay? So this one's actually easier as long as they're wanting the answer in the numerator. Because every time we answer a problem, it's in the numerator.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, let's do a few more. This time it says, write the answer in the denominator. Okay, so you can't just say x and then subtract those 6. Well, actually you probably could. 6 minus 4 is 2, and then you can make that into the denominator answer. What is x squared, the opposite? Well, right now it's x squared over 1.
1x.
So it would become 1 over x and then negative 2. So you can actually answer it first.
Yeah.
And then switch it to make it into the denominator. Okay, you understand how I did that?
Yes.
Does that make more sense to do it that way? Yeah, I think so too. So let's do it like that too. Again, x to the 6th power over x to the negative 4. Okay, so before I tell you if we're putting it in denominator or numerator, let's just answer the problem. 6 minus a negative 4. Okay, so this would become a plus positive 4. So we would get x to the 10th power, right? Okay, but what if that's in the numerator, but what if I told you I needed it to be in the denominator?
1 over x.
1 over x to the negative 10. See how we did that?
Yeah.
Okay, and they actually said on this one to answer it and put it in both ways. So either way, we answered it in that first, and then they wanted it in this as well. Okay? So they told us to answer it in both ways. Alright, now, this is where it gets a little bit harder, so make sure you're really paying attention. Okay? If you need to pause it and get up and stretch, you may. Okay. So, x to the negative a over x to the b. Now this makes it harder because these are not numbers, they're letters, okay? And so it makes it a little bit harder, but I want you to think, what am I actually doing if I'm dividing these variables?
Negative a minus b.
The answer is going to be x, negative a, and b. Remember, these subtract, so negative a minus b. Okay, you see how we did that answer?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's actually what you're going to leave it as. But if they were to tell you, actually it just says simplify this, okay? So I want you to know that if they say simplify this, you're going to make it in that form, and then you're going to make it into its opposite form, which is 1 over x a b. Because remember, these change. This becomes its reciprocal, 1 over x, and this negative a becomes a, and this negative b becomes b. Alright? So they're actually wanting you to write it in both forms. So you remember that, okay? All right, let's do a few more, and then we're moving on to something a little bit harder, even more. Oh, right? Okay. X to the negative fifth, y to the sixth, z, and I'm putting a line in it to show you, then over z to the negative third, y to the second, and x, and it's just x. So I'm going to put a 1 on the x and a z, a 1 on the z, just because I know that there's one z, there's one x, so let's go ahead and show that. Alright? Now, what I want you to do is, you see how this is z, y, x, and this one's x, y, z? I'm going to go ahead and put them in order. It just seems to make more sense to do it that way. So,
So it's the x and z.
x over 1 was that one, y over 2 was that one, and z to the negative 3 was that one. Alright, so let's go on and write out the answer for this. Okay, so here we go. Let's just do negative 5 minus 1 becomes
X to the negative 6.
negative 5 minus 1, which will become plus a negative, make it a negative 6, right? Alright, now let's try our y. Y, 6 minus 2. Remember that rule, we're dividing, so you have to do 6 minus 2, which will become 4. And then z, 1 minus a negative 3. So this will become a plus positive 3, which will become 4. Alright, there's the answer for that. Alright, now, that is one answer. But there are actually 4 answers to this one. And I'm going to explain to you why. Okay, so let's, first of all, this is the answer, but what if I wanted to make it the opposite, where the 1 is on the top instead of the 1 being on the bottom, even though you can't see it on a numerator problem?
1 over x to the 6th.
Okay, so wait a minute. We're going to switch this. So 1 over x, and this negative 6 becomes a positive 6. This y to the positive 4 becomes negative 4. And this z to the positive 4 becomes
negative 4.
Okay? And that's our answer for that one. Now, do you see how this answer up here has some negative answers and some positive? Some negative variables and some positive variables. This one down here in the denominator has some negative ones and some positive ones. Now, what they're going to have you do on this next one is they want them all to be positive or them all to be negative. So, let's look at this answer since we already have it. Okay, for just a minute. So this one's A, this one's B answer. We're going to have C and a D. This one is if the answer's all in the numerator. All's in the top, over 1. This is if all of the answers are in the denominator. This next one is, C is going to be all the answers are positive exponents. So, if my y and my z are positive, which one do I have to change?
X.
This one. So, this x to the negative 6 would become 1 over x to the 6th. And then this is already y to the 4th and z to the 4th. We leave these on top because this is the numerator, even if you don't see the 1 underneath the denominator. Okay? Numerators are always the answer in the numerators, even if you don't know it. Just an answer is the numerator. So, we leave it, this is the answer. All of them are positive. Okay? Now let's do D. We want all of our exponents to be negative. Okay? Well, I have these two negative. So what do I do with this one? Make it a negative. Well, right now it's x to the 6th. But what's it going to become? I'm going to move it up here. 1 over x becomes x on the top. And this 6 becomes negative 6.
Yeah.
See how we moved it up there? Over, and we've already got these two down in the denominator, so we're just going to leave them. Y to the negative 4 and z to the negative 4. And that gives us all of our answers in negative form. So, this one's all in numerator form, A is. B is all in denominator form. C, all positive variables and exponents. And D, all negative exponents. Whew, that's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, and now we're going to move on to the second part of that lesson. I'm going to take a quick break. All right, now we're going to do the second part of lesson 40B, and this is distributive property of rational expressions that contain negative exponents. Now, all that to say is basically, I'm going to write a problem up here and let's work it together, okay? So you might want to write this on your paper. Or you can just watch me, however you want to do it. Okay, now before you freak out, here's what it says. Use the distributive property to expand. And they want us to write the answer with all exponents positive. Okay. So before we get started, I'm going to go in and put this over 1. Do you understand why I did that?
Yeah.
Okay, because this is a numerator, denominator, just a numerator. So we're going on and make it a numerator, denominator. Now, because they want all of the exponents to be positive. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at just this one first, okay? And obviously which one needs to be positive? The x negative squared. Now, the 4 doesn't change. The x negative 2 does. So, do you remember what to do with this?
No.
You put it on the bottom, and you remember how you do that? You just make it, remember if it's x to the negative square, that's really over 1. So then to change it to its positive form, it becomes 1 over x squared.
Yeah.
So basically what I want you to realize is that you're taking this to this. When you move it from the numerator to the denominator, it takes it apart. So you don't even have to think in this form anymore. Okay? So now stay with me. Whoops. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this x negative 2 and you're going to move it down to make it x squared. Okay, so we're going to leave the 4 at the top, and I'm moving this down. So then it becomes, I'm always going to put them in alphabetical order, just from now on, so you'll know that. So x negative 2, when I move it down, it becomes x squared. And then this y4, we're going to keep as y4 because it is positive. Okay?
Yeah.
You with me?
Yeah.
Now we're going to multiply that by this equation up here. Okay? Is this one already all of them positive?
Yeah.
So let's leave it. So your very first step, hopefully that you see, actually I'm going to put this in alphabetical order. Instead of it being y4 and x squared, I'm going to make it x squared y4. Hopefully you see that what I'm doing is I'm making everything, the answer, they want the answer to be with all the exponents positive. So I'm going to go in and make the equation all exponents positive. That way when I do the problem, the answer is in the form it should be. Yep. Did you get what I mean by that?
Yep.
So, we're making everything positive, and then we're going to work the problem. Okay? So, I did this one, and I just moved those around, put it over 1, minus, okay, 3x4, that one's good, this one is not good. So, I'm going to move it up to make it 4 negative squared. It's going to become just, I'm sorry, did I say 4? Y negative squared. When I move it up, it's going to be y squared.
Yeah.
So this will be 3x to the 4th y squared. And I'm going to want to put that over 1. Okay, that way we'll have a numerator and denominator.
Okay.
You with me?
Yep.
Okay, now, because my board is too small, this is my problem and I'm going to work it up here.
Okay.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take, and how you do this is just like when we had a number, for example, those are just numbers. These are fractions slash letters. So what you're going to do is you're going to go 4 times this minus 4 times that, okay? So we're still doing the same kind of problems, we just now have letters and stuff. Now, Another thing you need to recognize is that the numerator multiplies by the numerator, the denominator multiplies by the denominator. Did you get that?
Yeah.
So, let's take this 4 and multiply it by x squared y4. Basically, you bring them all together. So, x4, x squared y4. Okay, now let's do this. You got it? See what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Over x squared y to the 4th. Alright? Minus, still with me?
Yep.
Okay. Now we're going to say 4 times this. Okay? And we get 4 times 3. You want to take your number, time your number. 4 times 3 is 12. And then we get x4, y2. Okay? Over, and then we're going to multiply x squared y4 times 1, which ends up being x squared y4. Whoops. y4. Now, before we finish, okay, what I want you to see is, do you remember when we were saying...
You can cross out.
Okay, just a while ago, in the last portion of this lesson, now that I'm done with this, let me show you something. Remember how I was showing you x to the 6th, x to the 3rd? Whenever you have x, and this one has 6 and this one has 3, do you remember that you're supposed to subtract?
Yeah.
Okay, so because this is, so basically what you're doing is x6 minus 3. So 6 minus 3, which will become x to the 3rd power, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, let's look back up at our problem up here. We've got x to the 2nd power, x to the 2nd power. So guess what happens? X to the 2nd minus 2 becomes 0, right?
Yep.
So guess what happens to the x's?
They cross out.
Yeah, you're done with them. You don't even use them. Okay, what about the y's? Same thing, y to the 4th. And then you remember you subtract your exponents, 4 minus 4. It'd be y to the 0. Those cross out. Okay? So the answer of this portion is just 4. And if you want to put 4 over 1, you can. But it's just 4. Okay, minus, now let's look at this one. I've got x4 and x2, so that's x4 minus 2, which makes it x squared, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to leave my 12 up top. And so this x and x goes x squared. And this y and y, okay, y squared minus y to the 4th. So 2 minus 4 becomes
-2.
2 plus a negative 4, which becomes -2. Now, stay with me. Okay? And we can put that over 1 if you want to. Now, they wanted, how did they say this? Write the answer with all exponents positive.
Yeah.
Okay, are all exponents positive?
No, you can
No.
move to the y to the negative.
So now what you want to do is the one that is not positive, you're going to change. And remember, we just swap this.
Yeah.
And so it becomes y squared instead of y negative squared. Whenever you bring it down, it changes its form. Got it?
Yep.
So the answer ends up being 4, or 4 over 1, minus 12x squared over y squared.
Yep.
Feel like you understand it pretty good?
Yep.
Okay, there's 2 more of these because they're wanting you to teach you different methods using different things. For example, this next one we're doing is they want the answer to be all variables. Variables are just the letters because they vary. We never know what the letter actually means, what number. So they're variable, so they vary, they change. So what are variables? The letters. Okay, they're wanting all variables to be in the numerator. That's what they want the answer to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so which one's the numerator, the top or the bottom?
Top.
Top. Okay, so let's take the problem. X negative squared y times, and I'm going to want to put 1 right here just because it helps me. Y to the 4th power over x to the 2nd power minus x to the fourth power and y to the second power. Okay. Now, they want all variables, you can go in and write letters if that helps you, all letters to be in the numerator. Okay? This one is, because if it's written in the front, it's always the top number. Okay? This one is not. So let's go in and change this one. If I were to take this x squared and move it up to the numerator, what would it become? X to the negative squared. Okay? So I'm just working on this portion now. I'm going to go on and write this in alphabetical order, just because I think it helps me. So I'm going to take x negative squared and then y4. X negative squared y4. That way it's in alphabetical order. Now let's look at this one. They want all of the letters to be in the numerator, so this y squared goes up and becomes
y negative squared.
Y negative squared. Very good. Okay, and it is in alphabetical order. X and now Y. Got it?
Yep.
And now I'm going to go in and delete this from the 1, I just realized, because we want all numerators. Okay, so now basically what I'm doing is multiplying this times this, and then minus this times this. Now, hopefully you remember, and I had you write at the very top of the beginning of this lesson, is that what you're going to do is we're going to multiply this times this. Now, whenever you multiply exponents, what happens? What am I actually doing to the exponents when I'm multiplying?
Adding them.
I'm adding them. So this x, and I've got -2 plus a -2. -2 plus a -2 becomes -4. So when I multiply this times this, that's what happened. And now let's do the y. Y to the first power times y to the fourth. So it's 1 plus 4. 1 plus 4. So y to the fifth. You staying with me?
Yep.
All right. Now, minus, now you're going to do that to this one. Okay? And this time it's going to be x -2 and plus a +4. So this becomes +2. All right. And y, 1 plus a -2, which becomes -1. Okay? All right? So now we get x to the -4th, y to the 5th, minus x squared, y to the -1st. Okay? And then you just leave the answer. They're not teaching you how to complete the rest. They're just wanting you to use the distributive property to do this times this, and then this times this, and all the answers to be in the numerator. All the letters. Okay? So we did exactly what they wanted us to do. All right, let's do the next one. And this one is telling us to use the distributive property and write all the variables, letters, in the denominator this time. Okay? So let's write this out. K squared B over P to the -2 times AB -1 over K2 minus 4P squared over B. Okay. Now, what are they wanting us to do? To bring all the letters to the denominator. Okay, so before we even work the problem and do the distributive property, we're going to change this to be all in the denominator, all the letters. So, before I do that, I'm going to make this a 1, this a 1, and this b 1. Okay? Now, I'm going to move all my letters, with just this portion first, to the denominator, just like they wanted. Okay? So, I'm going to move the k squared down, which then becomes k to the negative squared. I'm going to move the b to the first power down, which becomes b to the -1. And then the p, -2 is already there. Okay? So we want a 1 on top because we got to have something up there. Something has to be in the numerator. Okay? Now, what I want you to see is this is not in alphabetical order. So I'm going to want to put it in alphabetical order. So we're going to put b to the -1, k to the -2. b to the negative 1, k to the negative 2, p to the negative 2. Alright? And then that's going to multiply. Alright, let's do this next section. They want all the variables in the denominator. So this a to the first power moves down and becomes a to the negative first power. B to the negative first power moves down and becomes b to the first power. Good. And the k stays k. And this one actually happened to be in alphabetical order. Good. We're going to put a 1. Right? Down. Okay. Now the 4 is not letters. They just wanted the variables to be in the denominator.
Yeah.
4 stays.
4 stays.
Got it? So then I just have to move this p to the denominator. So I'm going to put b to the first power, just because I'm already going to put it in alphabetical order. B to the first power. And when I move my p to the second power down, it becomes p to the negative second power. You with me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to erase this part, and we'll answer our problem up here. Okay, so remember, numerator times numerator, denominators times denominators. Okay, so numerator times numerator, 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, and then this times this. Now, as you can see, we have a B, K, and a P, and over here we have an A, B, and a K. So, I'm going to do an alphabetical order. Can I multiply this A times anything over here? No. So we just leave it. A to the negative 1. Okay? But my B's, I have a B negative 1 times a B positive 1. And remember, when you're multiplying letters, you're adding the exponents. So that becomes B negative 1 plus a positive 1, which becomes B to the 0, which deletes it. So B is done. We don't need to do anything with B. Okay? What about K? K negative 2 plus K positive 2 makes K 0 again. Done with. Okay? P times nothing over here just becomes P negative squared. We just leave it just as it is. Good? Minus, now we're going to go 1 times 4 and get 4 over. Okay? Now we're going to, oh boy. Now, because I erased these, it's good, but I'm going to have to write them back up. Let's see, we had a B. I shouldn't have done that so much. It's going to be B negative 1 right here. And this K is going to be negative 2. And then P negative 2, okay? Now, that's good. Okay, so now we're going to take this B negative 1, K negative 2, P negative 2, and multiply by this. Okay, I have a B negative 1 and a B 1. So we take B negative 1 plus the positive 1, and so B becomes nothing. I'm just going to do that on that one this time, even though I'm not going to be using it anymore. Okay, K, can I multiply it by anything here?
Nope.
No, so it just stays as is. And then P, negative 2 and negative 2. So P negative 2 plus a negative 2 becomes negative 4. So P negative 4. There you go. Let's see if that was completely right. Yes. And sometimes in your answer book, you might want to tell your mom that you put them in alphabetical order. Because sometimes the book does and sometimes it doesn't, so I never know. So I've checked my all my stuff and I'm right. Okay? And that's how you do lesson 40.